This video is intended to provide guidance on completing a pre-trip on a Class B commercial motor vehicle. Whether you are new to the job or a seasoned professional, your job as a professional driver is getting your cargo from one point to another in a safe and timely manner. While there are several unavoidable factors, such as traffic or the weather, that could disrupt your day, conducting regular inspections of your commercial motor vehicle is one of the simplest ways to help avoid accidents, roadside breakdowns, and lost road time due to poor vehicle condition. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration requires you to conduct a minimum of 3 types of vehicle inspections. Pre-trip, which takes 15 to 20 minutes and covers the engine compartment and front axle components. In-cab inspection, lights, walk-around, and brake system check. A pre-trip inspection is one of the most important tasks that a driver performs on a daily basis. A thorough pre-trip demonstrates that the vehicle is safe to be on the road for your sake as well as for other drivers on the road. As a professional truck driver, you are required to perform a pre-trip, document the pre-trip, and you are held accountable for the accuracy of the pre-trip. In other words, if you are found to be operating a vehicle that does not meet all pre-trip requirements, you can be ticketed and fined.
Talk about pre-trip. Pre-trip obviously is a part of our daily routine with any commercial vehicle, and a post-trip to follow that at the end of the day. So without looking at the objectives, a few obvious ones here. First off, to make sure the truck is roadworthy going down the highway. So we're making sure the lights are working, making sure it's mechanically ready to go. Cab should be spotless. So these are common sense objectives. We're not going to read all of these, but the main goal is to make sure that we have safe vehicles on the road. Okay? And if you ever find anything wrong with a truck that is an out of service situation, your job is to go in, communicate that with the management, and get a plan together to get that fixed. Okay? We talked about making sure that you have DEF, oil, all fluids for the make model of the trucks that you currently have, the standard bulbs that you have, instead of waiting at 2 hours to go get a tail light replaced when you can change the bulb here and get your day going and be more productive. Those types of items should be on site, along with the relay fuses and all those things. The common things that we know that we need to have on site. All the companies that I deal with, their drivers are expected to do some of the minor maintenance. So listen, we don't touch brakes. You have to be a certified mechanic to adjust brakes, all that. You know how to do it. We don't mess with that. But it comes to the bulbs, it comes to the fluid, it comes to changing some wipers. If you should be pretty comfortable on different types of services. There's the routine servicing, the scheduled preventive maintenance, and the unscheduled, which we cannot prevent. Every year there should be a sticker that goes on the trucks for the DOT's annuals. So routine servicing, the driver can do these things. That's fuel, the coolant, the oil. Okay, that's quite obvious. And then for the scheduled preventive maintenance, that's where you work with the management. That's why it's important to know the mileage that's going in there, because 2 things will cause should red flag for scheduled maintenance, preventive maintenance. One is date. So even though we may not have stuck 10,000 miles on the vehicle, but if it's a truck that's been sitting for 6 months or a year, you still want to go ahead and get it back in for a PM. Here's the different levels of scheduled PMs, and your shop should know all this, and you should have an understanding of this. And I believe that you said that you have a consulting group that assist you with, hey, they're getting ready to build this. Is this right? Is this?
There should be a trifold brochure in each of your glove boxes that has the maintenance schedule for each of your vehicles.
Moving right along here. So the unscheduled maintenance. Let's talk about if we do have a breakdown on the highway. Good reminder for us CDL drivers that we make sure that we got reflective triangles. We don't use the fusee flares anymore. They're not good, especially if guys are having accidents and they weren't thinking. Boom, they light the fusee flare, and boom, we got a big fire going on. So on top of that, certain areas you light that fuse and we get a field fire going on. So we just kind of went away from them. Responsibilities as drivers, you have to detect and communicate what needs repaired. You just can't assume that somebody understands what you need. You got it. You have to communicate that. Solid pre-trips are big. That's where you and I avoid accidents before we pull away. And then we need to stop, especially on any commercial vehicle, on these flatbed trucks. 50 miles, the first out, whatever comes within the first. You guys, if you don't have any stops before that, stop and check those straps. I'm sure you guys do, right?
Many times.
And then 150 miles or every 3 hours after that, and/or at each stop, you guys are checking those straps. And you guys remember in the mirrors every 5 to 8 seconds. More of the driver awareness. Pay attention to your senses. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. You ever had that? It's like, oh, I knew that. I shouldn't have done that. Go with, on these big trucks, go with that. If it doesn't feel right, get it looked into. You guys have any problems with wipers? That's an easy fix. If you got a wiper that's not right, stop and get one and get it on there. Okay? Same thing if you get a tire that's not wearing right. We got something that's out of balance, right? And you guys are hauling some extreme weight. Even those commercial vehicles, the toe in, toe out, sometimes can get messed up. Sight, sound, smell, feel. If that's not normal, especially for the new truck you're driving, Bruce, keep the back brake keeps smoking a little bit, or you keep getting that hot brakes going. We got something that's out of adjustment. Get to the shop. Let's get it looked at. Knowing the company policy, the maintenance policy. If you don't know what that is, make sure that you guys review that. Make sure that when you log back in, if Acme Shop has fixed the vibration in the front, you guys should have a report back that it's been fixed. And that has to somehow be initialed or documented or signed by the person who made the repair. That's a DOT law. Obviously, the mechanic has to be responsible enough to make sure that the repairs are made correctly. And if you get with a shop where it seems like the things aren't going right, management should make the decision to go find another shop. We don't ignore the ABS light. We don't ignore the check engine light. Just oh, it's always on. No, it's on because there's an electrical problem that's why it's staying on, or we really have whatever it's warning of us. There's an issue. We don't wait till we're metal against metal on our brake pads. It's no less than a 1/4 inch thickness on those pads, which is as much weight as you guys are hauling. You guys start getting really close to that 1/4 inch. Make sure that you guys are getting those brakes repaired. Make sure you're writing it up that you need some brake pads, brake shoes on there. Tires, we got a 4 30 seconds, 2 30 seconds. If you guys don't have a tire depth gauge, a penny will do it too. Clutches, your fleet currently, you guys have to worry about clutches at the fleet now?
Except for one vehicle, everybody else is except for one truck.
Okay, all right.
They just check the fluid.
If you have a clutch and it seems like it's slipping, go get it adjusted. And of course, the engine, moving parts in there. But you can do a lot of things to make sure that we're preventing breakdowns. If you get a truck that's pulling hard left, hard right, we got something that's probably wrong with either brake out of alignment, or we have maybe a steering component problem. Just don't ignore it. For the proper adjustments on the brakes, that's the CFR 396.25, and it tells about how the mechanic's supposed to adjust the brakes, who can adjust them and who can't. And then also we'll go back over all the air pressures tomorrow when we do the hands-on. Obviously load ratings and knowing what the tire's inflation is supposed to be on that too. So we can check the inflation. We also have to make sure that we know that what the inflation is, what the tire pressure is supposed to be. More about the clutches. It sounds like we're kind of going away from those in these fleets, but obviously 1 to 2 inches of free play at the top of the clutch pedal. And make sure we're not overloading that clutch. More about the lifespan, make sure the correct gear for the clutch. Good thing about the automatics is it does all the progressive shifting for you, which is less wear and tear on our vehicle. Okay. So this is a PowerPoint that I put together last year for Fight Out of Columbus. All right, so it's a Freightliner, it's not international, but it's pretty much the same style vehicle that you guys were driving. So when we walk up to a truck like this as a driver, first thing we're looking to make sure is see if that's leaning left or right. Or is there anything obvious that's not right?
Puddles or anything.
That's it. Any fluids leaking, those types of things. The overall condition, We're gonna, we're checking just the headlights, the turn signal lights, making sure that everything's mounted correctly, making sure we don't have any cracks, breaks. Also, right now we're not even worried about if they're working yet. We're just walking around the truck, making sure everything's intact. Cannot do a pre-trip without opening the hood. I heard a story yesterday where they asked if someone had done a good pre-trip, and they said, yeah, sure did a good pre-trip, and then they handed them the oil dipstick and said, here, how about this? What was the level of oil? That should be, that's kind of a disgrace to us as professional drivers. We got to check all fluids. We're pretty lucky with some of the coolant level checks. We can take a look at the reservoir to see if it's between the add and the full, or if it needs some fluid, and also the green bubbles on some of those coolant checks. We have to be very careful if the truck's been running, even if it's a reservoir. We do not want to take those caps off, or be very cautious if you have to, if it's under any type of pressure. Okay, so follow what the manufacturer says to do on the vehicle that you're driving. The alternator, a few things on that we check. For one, we're checking the tension of the belts. We're also checking the wiring on it, making sure it's all intact, and we're making sure that it's mounted correctly. The water pump, 9 times out of 10, they're not the easiest things to look at the way that they are with it internally in the engine, but you can tell if you got a problem because usually it's leaking. The air compressor, that's the thing that obviously makes sure that we got the pressure we need for our brakes. And a couple things on your compressor. One is making sure the relief valve is working properly. So we're watching those gauges, making sure we get that relief around 120 to 125 when we get that release of air, and while we're driving, and making sure we don't hear a whole bunch of hissing noise from that. Checking our dipstick, right here, we're just making sure that's in the normal operating range. Some of them have add and full on it, some of them just have the grooves on it. You have to understand what the manufacturer says is the normal operating range, and obviously there's a manual that comes with those trucks. Power steering reservoir, some of them we can see the sights from just standing, doing a visual. Other ones we have to pull the dipstick out, and or if the truck's warm, if it's cool, it has different levels. We have to have understanding. Obviously, this is the verbiage that students have to tell state examiner. It's not broken, cracked, or damaged. It's not leaking, not frayed. Close up here of suspension. These are called spring hangers, and these are your leaf springs. All right, and we're checking for shiny spots. All right, and we're checking for shiny spots on that, making sure we don't have anything that's worn or broken. If it is, obviously, we'll report that. If you got any broken suspension, it's out of service. Some of the U-bolts, Vicki, that you and I were talking about, you have those all throughout commercial vehicles, and making sure that they're nice and taut and no shiny spots on those. Your shocks, a couple things that are red flags if we have issues with your shocks. One, we got rust on them to where they're eating through. That's a big no-no. If we have hydraulic fluid leaking out around them, we actually have a blown shock. Or if we're on our shock mounts, if it's shiny, we got some worn bushings there also. So a few things here with our braking system. So we have ABS line. We have the air hoses that come off of that to go into the brake chamber. These are the push rod slack adjusters. Let's review on the push rod slack adjusters. The only way that you can safety check the push rod slack adjusters is where the truck needs to be at least 100 psi. We chock the wheels, we push the brake valve in, and we get out and we grab a hold and make sure that these don't move more than an inch. If they got more of an inch play in them, then they're out of alignment. Tires, rims, lug nuts, and the hub seal. This is a hub seal here. All right, we're making sure there's no fluid on that. On our lug nuts, we're checking to make sure we don't have any rusty teardrops that's around that. That would indicate that we got a loose lug nut on that. Making sure that we don't have any illegal welds where somebody tried to repair these rims. That's a big no-no. Those go in the garbage. And the condition of the tire. Bulges, cuts, scrapes, they're wearing funny, anything that just looks abnormal with that tire. Those mirrors are always adjusted for you, the driver. Oh, of course, making sure that your lashes work. Things to look for. All right, this is where we make sure we got the 10 BC rated fire extinguisher. You want to make sure that it's mounted. You got to make sure this is something to be on your checklist too. That you have a company come in and do the annuals on those. So fuses, reflector triangles. That's a part of your safety. Seat belts. Commercial vehicles are notorious for getting these seat belts frayed because, after a while the retractor gets worn out. If it starts to get worn out, get it fixed, get it replaced. what happens is the seat belts get caught down in the nadir pin. So you start shutting the door, we start fraying those seat belts. You guys seen that before?
Yeah.
Well, these seat belts are just like, our straps that we have on our loads. They're designed for a certain amount of inertia, if you will, and if it's halfway frayed, you and I are still going to go flying through the windshield if they're not right, okay? So we'll keep an eye on that. Clutch gear shift, that's a safe start. If we have a clutch, make sure even if you don't have a clutch, if we don't have any like a pop bottle or anything rolling around on the floor that's going to get in the way of our pedals. And then of course our parking brake check. So obviously this here has 2 valves, it's a Class A, but with us, with the Class B, we'd have 1 valve. All right. So for the parking brake test, in the mornings, what we should be doing, and I'll say you guys because we're in this together, we get our air pressure built up, we go ahead and put it in gear and see if the brakes hold, parking brake hold. Then we want to check our service brake. The service brake is actually the brake pedal. Go forward 10 feet, push the brake, go forward 10 feet, push the brake. It should not pull left or right. It should be nice and smooth stop. And then we do the emergency brake test, and that's where we start doing the pump down with the key on, making sure that the low air warning device comes on right around 60, somewhere in there. And then somewhere at 35, it's, all trucks are different. Wipers, washers, obviously. So every year at least you should put new wipers on them trucks. All your indicator lights, got your in-cab checks right there. And you guys get air horns on your trucks too?
One does.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So always try to spec that with, obviously they come with the city horn, make sure they got air horns too on them. All right, the leak test, that's where we have to make sure that we got the truck off and we're holding our foot and the key on, but the truck's off, and we do our feet flat on the floor, making sure we don't have any loss of PSI, and that's 3 PSI at the feet flat on the floor. And then we also put our foot on the service brake. We shouldn't have a loss of any more than 2 PSI, and that would be on a Class B truck. Okay, Class A, it's a little higher because you get a trailer on it. Your light check. Technically, if a DOT guy, if you have 3 marker lights out on different parts of the truck, you can write you 3 citations. Okay, now that's getting pretty picky, but if they want to be picky, they can. But if we know the lights are out, and we should, just get them fixed. That's the cheap stuff. Get it fixed.
On-the-road inspections are required within the first 50 miles, when a change of duty status is made, and every 3 hours or every 150 miles, whichever comes first. The on-the-road inspection includes cargo securement checks. Remember, if you are carrying any hazardous material, you must check your tires at every stop. Post-trip inspections are required by the regulations and must be conducted at the conclusion of every workday. Post-trip inspections identify any potential safety issues that need to be addressed before the next driver takes over, even if that next driver is you. During the post-trip inspection, you will inspect everything that you inspected for the pre-trip, with the exception of any items affected by heat, such as oil, tire pressure, brake shoes and drums, hub oil, and exhaust components. The post-trip will take 10 to 12 minutes.